Welcome to Bill the Lender podcast, devoted to educating you on a variety of financial subjects with an emphasis on real estate and real estate finance. Please click the button to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss an episode. Then like and share your favorite episodes. Hello and welcome everybody to Bill the Lender podcast. I'm your host, Bill the Lender, and today's guest we have Jenny Bayless. Jenny is a local expert in the Colorado Springs market where her expertise is in buy and hold renter properties, long-term wealth planning through real estate, and financial analysis. She has a background in finance and has been investing in Colorado Springs since 2016. Over the past several years, Jenny has performed value-add methodology such as Burr to optimize the performance of her portfolio while efficiently managing it. Further, she has experience in obtaining deals through the MLS, wholesale, networking, FSBO, and has experience with multiple different finance sources such as conventional, hard money, and seller financing on both sides of the transaction. Jenny is continuously looking for opportunities to increase the return on equity of her portfolio by purchasing additional properties. And in her spare time, she enjoys traveling and exploring Colorado with her family. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi, Bill. How's it going?
Good. Glad to have you on the show. Most listeners don't know this, but a little tidbit. You and your partner, Chris, actually are part of the impetus and genesis behind a Bill the Lender podcast.
Yep.
You guys actually gave it the name. And so I want to thank you for that because you guys really have inspired your listeners with some great information and have inspired me. So thank you. So today we're going to talk about all things investing with you, and you have a tremendous amount of experience. For our listeners, can you explain Burr for us?
Sure. So it is a method. So it stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. And essentially what it is that the main objective is to procure a property below market value. One way to kind of think of it is a flip that you hold. So you would purchase it, you would be able to do some value add, such as, just some hopefully light renovations to get it to appraise at a higher value so that you're able to either rate and term refinance or cash out refinance that original note that you took out to procure the property and be able to kind of rinse and repeat your cash doing it that way. So it's a phenomenal way to scale.
Yeah, it is. And you've been doing it for quite some time. And I think today's podcast is going to be interesting because a lot of folks have a lot of hesitation in this market with rising rates and how tight the market is. What are the benefits beyond cash flow for rental real estate, do you think, at this time?
Yeah. So, what I'm about to say is probably blasphemy, but I don't think Burr is very good in this environment right now. Just because we have so much interest rate risk, so much, material and supply risk going on for the rehab portion. There's just a lot of unknowns that, can really kind of bust your numbers in this economy. So, I would just put that out there in terms of benefits of buy and hold real estate. I mean, cash flow is just one component. We like to teach that there's really four main components of rental real estate, investment. So there's cash flow, but there's also appreciation, which is when the value of the property goes up. Depreciation, which is a non-cash expense that you get to realize on your tax return, which is pretty powerful as well. And then debt pay down. So, while your tenants are living in your home, if you have a mortgage on it, they are paying your mortgage off. They're paying that principal payment down every single month. So you're getting a little bit of equity that way. And I really think that equity is the way to scale. Cash flow is nice. Cash flow keeps you afloat. It's nice to put that back in your pocket, but I think that you need that equity component to really be able to play around with that, to be able to scale your portfolio to a meaningful level.
Yeah, and it's what's funny is that over the last 5 years we've seen just ridiculous amounts of appreciation, and we can't
Mhm.
necessarily expect a 22% rate of return every year, but traditionally real estate has outperformed traditional investment vehicles, i.e., the stock market, uh, every time. Still,
Mhm.
and particularly, now with the market being as volatile as it is, we're seeing a lot of people reposition their cash
Yep.
into real estate. And they're doing things like delayed financing. Although you mentioned interest rate risk, it really is something to be concerned about. However, bad for me, but real estate, yeah, real estate as a whole, as a solid investment, a great thing. Now, with the market being so volatile, with there being supply chain issues, with the inventory being so low, why are you still investing in Colorado Springs with prices going up and rates going up?
Yeah, so I mean, we are still investing. This year, even we closed a couple months ago on a property with you guys. I mean, I think that it's still the best place to put our cash for investment. So I I'm not even going to pretend that I am well educated in the stock market or crypto or anything like that, but
NFTs.
yeah, I really don't know too much about that. I'm really, not super involved in that, but real estate, I can understand, I can wrap my head around. So, we're just still buying just very carefully. We're looking at properties just from a long term perspective, buying in areas that we think, obviously appreciation's not promised, but uh, we're reasonably confident that we will see some sort of price growth. That's good to expect. And then of course, just, like I said, just I think that it's a better place to put some of our extra cash.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Well,
I
it's a
just think that.
tangible asset that, you can see and touch and feel. I mean,
Mhm.
I know I'm most comfortable in real estate. I think you have to sort of find a vehicle that makes sense to you. Um, is there a specific criteria as you're evaluating these markets, Colorado Springs, maybe Pueblo, maybe Denver? Are you looking for, some people look for areas of transit, or they're looking for blue collar neighborhoods that where a popular neighborhood is starting to spill into? Or is there a specific criteria that you are looking for as you're evaluating neighborhoods that you favor over other trends? Let's just say.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. The properties that I bought, years ago, they're kind of all in one little pocket of town just because that's where the numbers worked out really well. And now we're kind of starting to branch out a little bit. Like I bought a property that's right in the middle of downtown, Colorado Springs. So I think that one is really poised for growth. It's like break even cash flow. You were able to hook us up with a really good loan last year. I think it's at what, 3.75 or
7.5 or
something.
something ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. so it's pretty much, um nothing to, even write home about on, the interest costs for this home. So we're also looking kind of on the east side of town. I think that part of town is kind of poised for growth as well. So it's like, you know, even though cash flow is very very thin right now, we have a group of properties that are cash flowing really well because we've had them for several years, and I think that's allowed us to kind of um, go into areas that we think are poised for equity growth.
Right. And, I mean, things change, right?
Hmm.
Transit may change, plans may change, school districts improve, which makes some neighborhoods more desirable. And you guys sort of have a bead on all of that. We talk about the east side of Colorado Springs, are there other markets that you guys are considering emerging markets that you are an expert in?
Yeah, so we just bought our first property in Pueblo this year.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm super
Who would have
excited about
thought
it.
Pueblo?
I know. Yep, it's in the Belmont neighborhood, is right near CSU Pueblo. I think that that part of town has a lot going for it. It has, all the like little chain restaurants, chain stores that you would, y- want to see. And I always kind of figure that the people that are doing market research for those establishments have a lot more money and a lot more brains than me. So I just kind of follow along with what they're doing. So, I think well, especially that part of town, but I think Pueblo in general kind of has a lot going for it,
Mhm.
especially as we're seeing affordability get squeezed in Denver and Colorado Springs. I think that Pueblo is a very good alternative for people who are looking for, single family homes that they wouldn't normally be able to afford in Colorado Springs, for instance. And I think that it has a lot going for it when you kind of dive into some of the stats that are going on.
Yeah, they've got the river walk and everything that they're doing to revitalize the downtown, and it
Hmm.
really has become a really cool market. I think for you guys, have sort of created a little stronghold out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you got your assistant Leah, one of my favorite people, who's crushing it in that market too. So, what are some current market opportunities? Because I think people are just so concerned about potentially even buying and hold and watching real estate prices fall. What would you say to someone who had that concern today?
So that's a really good question. I think that's a lot of people's concerns. I guess I'll kind of just repeat the trope that I think it was like five of the last six recessions, real estate values didn't fall. The obvious one that it did fall was real estate induced.
Right.
I don't think
Well,
people
that
are
was lending induced, I would argue, but yeah.
real estate focus. How's that?
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, if you think about it, the people that even unfortunately got crushed during that time, people that had adequate cash reserves and were able to weather the storm and held on to those assets are worth more than what they were then.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think it's just having that really, really long term focus on your properties. I'm not saying you have to hold every single property for 30 years, but we reposition all the time. Like, hey, this one appreciated a bunch. Let's cash this out, move it into this asset. Like that's part of real estate investing. But the goal is to have a real estate portfolio for the rest of our lives, basically.
When you bring up a really good point, because so many people are afraid of jumping into the game, but what would you give folks in terms of a minimum hold strategy? Because I think that's the part that's not really talked about is the ability to weather the storm. As long as you
Mhm.
have that ability to hold on to the asset, it is always going to earn you something eventually, right?
Yep.
So what do you have a minimum sort of when you counsel your clients, do you have sort of a minimum hold time? I know there's a lot of different strategies, but we're really talking about buy and hold as your strategy. Uh, what do you tell folks in terms of a minimum hold time or a horizon that they should be thinking about right now?
Yeah, I mean, as not specific asset wise, but like in terms of real estate, buy and hold real estate as a strategy, I think that it's a forever hold, really. In terms of most properties, you're probably going to have to hold on to it for, 5 to 10 years for it to give you any sort of meaningful return. Obviously, the last couple of years has
You had
that's
something that you
proven
were
that
holding on
wrong.
to the last 5 years. You've done better than most.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we are very happy with the properties that we bought 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, 1 year ago. But that's abnormal. And just to mention what you said about people having fears. So even if appreciation and cash flow are minimized in a period of economic issue, I guess you still have two other benefits that you can realize. You have tax benefits and you also have debt pay down. So, you still have, hopefully, assuming your property is being rented, you still have that mortgage being paid down. So you're realizing a little bit of equity each month, in that way. And I always just caution everyone, there's really three layers of safety. One is cash flow, two is reserves, and then probably 3 4 5 is reserves. Like, I'm very hard on that. And then also just having equity in the property, so as a last resort.
Well, and let's face it, everybody needs shelter, right? It's not
Hmm.
like the need for housing is going to go anywhere. It's
Right.
and that's what I think you and I both love about real estate. It's a trend that, I mean, it's like eating and sleeping. Everybody needs a place to do that, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's a solid asset that's tangible. With the market being as tight as it is, you guys focus on a couple of different markets. What are the big opportunities that you're seeing in Colorado right now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Some of the strategies that we recommend for people is look at Pueblo. It is a lower cost to enter. It's slightly less competitive. It's definitely, I think it's up and coming, especially certain areas. And Leah on our team is, honestly the expert in Pueblo,
Yeah,
having that she lived there for a while, and she's working really, really hard down there. So I think that's an opportunity. And then creative real estate strategies are also a really good opportunity, just in terms of, medium term rentals. That is a very needed niche in Colorado Springs, especially with the housing shortage that we have. People are moving to town for work or, whatever, and they have nowhere to live for 3 4 months while they're trying to purchase a home and getting outbid and all that. So medium term rental is a very lucrative strategy for a lot of our clients. And then something that I also suggest that people initially don't really like when I mention this is put more down. Last year everyone seemed to be okay with
spoiled, man. We've been
appraisal gaps.
spoiled. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's like people would, put in 30, 40, 50K appraisal gaps, but the thought of putting 30 to 35% down now for list price, people don't like, which I think is kind of funny because last year you were putting 30% down. You just weren't calling it that.
you
So
weren't.
it's
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so it's just, I think that just kind of looking at it that way, would I rather put 30% down on an asset to get it to cash flow as opposed to just leaving that in my bank earning 0.001% interest? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so what's really cool is you're providing us practical strategy in a market that's really, really difficult. And you're mentioning these other ways, short, medium term rentals that people may not know a lot about. So let's
Mhm.
dive into that a little bit more and talk about what that actually means. A medium term rental is what, every 6 months turnover. Short term might be 1 to 3. Talk a little bit about how you're attracting maybe those types of folks. Is it VBRO? Is it, are there certain sites you guys help your folks manage their rental pool?
So medium term rental is defined as 30 days or more.
Okay.
It's technically long term. At that point, it's, in the eyes of the city, it's a long term rental if it's a month or more,
Okay.
which is key because lately Colorado Springs has really cracked down on short term rental regulations. So, speaking only to medium term rental, a month or more, it's typically for corporate clients, people in between houses. Like, they sold a house and they want to not have a contingent sale so that they're most competitive in their purchase.
Mhm.
People moving into town that don't know areas and they want to kind of explore before they lock into a home, which I think is completely reasonable. So that's kind of the tenants that strategy caters to. Short-term rental, on the other hand, is much harder in Colorado Springs proper because there are quite a few regulations surrounding that. So, we partner with short-term rental managers, and they are, experts in their industry, and they know about certain areas, adjacent to town, like Teller County, for instance, Monument, that don't have those same restrictions. So people are starting to look there as an alternative as well.
Yeah, so that's all good stuff there. Now, as far as other strategies, what other things are you seeing with the clients that you help besides buy and hold? Because we're not seeing fix and flips in this market.
Yeah, we basically tell people, like, if you want to fix and flip, we're not the group to help you.
This is
Yeah.
probably not the market either.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah. But what other things are you looking at in terms of other strategies? Do you have any more?
Yeah. I mean, we do house hackers. So that's a
That's what I was
fantastic
looking for. What is a
strategy.
house hacker?
So a house hacker is someone who intends to purchase a home, live in it for the minimum required occupancy period. So it's 1 year,
Right.
and then move out of it and continue to rent it out. So it's a really, really good strategy because you get owner occupied interest rates, down payment requirements, all sorts of good stuff.
Lowers the barrier of entry for a lot of folks, right? Because
Yeah.
for budding investors, the biggest barrier of entry is the cash required, because investment properties require more down, right? So
Yeah.
doing the housing hack is a great way for new investors to get started.
And I think my favorite strategy that a lot of our house hackers are using it's a combination of rent by the room and house hacking. So they're putting 3.5 to 5% down on a property, getting that low interest rate. They are renting out each room or, section of rooms individually. So they're getting a markup on that. And then once their year is up, they move out of their room that they've been living in, rent that out, and do it again. And it's just absolutely like a phenomenal way to maximize cash flow in that case. And
well, they're
then
also getting the practical experience of managing tenants, right?
Yeah. I mean, you figure if you have a 4 or 5 bedroom home, you have 5 leases. That's a lot for a new landlord to kind of dive into. So that's a fantastic experience for somebody.
Love it. Well, Jenny, this has been really, really informative. I always love chatting with you because you're like a wealth of knowledge. If somebody wants to pick your brain a little bit more, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so definitely schedule a call with us. I work with Envision Advisors, which, as you mentioned, Chris Lopez is the founder of, and I work down in Colorado Springs and Pueblo. So schedule a call. I think that's going to be on the show notes, possibly on the YouTube page. So click that link and set up a call, and we'll figure out what works for you guys.
When you guys also have your own podcast, so for those folks who listen to mine, run over and check out Jenny's podcast and Chris's podcast. You want to give them the podcast names as well?
Yeah, really easy to remember. Colorado Springs Real Estate Investing Podcast, and then Chris's is the Denver Real Estate Investing Podcast. So very easy to remember that once you go into Apple to search for it.
There you go. Well, this has been another episode of Build a Lender Podcast, where we talk about all things financially service related and how it affects your real estate. Today's guest, Jenny Bayless. Jenny, thank you. Till next time, we'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for listening to Build a Lender Podcast. Please reach out to me with any questions at 303-877-6323.